Welcome back to the nationally syndicated Price of Business Show. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Always love having on the program Barbara Comstock. She is a show favorite. She is a personal favorite. The former Congresswoman, former Justice Department official. Really, she knows so much about what's going on in the political landscape, both from a historical perspective, because she's been watching this for a long time, but also today. And in fact, I know, and you'll gather from her voice. I chatted with her for just a moment. She's been doing a lot of talking about this stuff to a lot of media because she's a great, reliable go-to source in all this. Barbara, welcome back to the program. Interesting night. A lot of talk about red wave, and yet in the end, I think I look at Lindsey Graham, who said, well, not exactly a wave. He seemed very disappointed. And a lot of these numbers, when I look at it, kind of make me scratch my head as to what was behind the results.
No, exactly. No, great to be with you to discuss this. This is the kind of night that, just all the expectations went out the window. I think it really kind of came down to, in a lot of the cases, you nominate lousy candidates, you lose elections you should win. And I think, we had a situation where we have record inflation. The economy was the top issue. We have crime issues. We have border issues. Certainly the issue set, when you look at the polls, all favored Republicans. You looked at a lot of the polls. You looked at a lot of the prognosticators. I work with the University of Virginia. The crystal ball prognosticators said they thought we would win up to 24 Republican seats. Not going to get anywhere near that. Maybe half if we're lucky. Thought we would win just one Senate, maybe more accurate there, but we'll be lucky if we gain one seat in the Senate. Really defied a lot of the expectations because I think, people actually look at this in a more serious way maybe than people give them credit for. That, like if you're going into a restaurant and you're saying, I'm really hungry and this is what I want, and they bring you something you really don't like, you're kind of like, hey, I'm not coming back to that restaurant. That's not, I told you I wanted this, and some other slop that wasn't good, and you've got some really weird people in that restaurant that don't seem to know how to make food or whatever they're doing I don't like. So I think, it was kind of, people want normal. And I think this is, I think the only red wave I was saying earlier today, I saw a few people saying this too, was probably the ketchup on the walls at Mar-a-Lago. This is really, as we've talked about.
I like that. Sorry.
No, I mean, Trump had, he had to pick Dr. Oz. Already the reports are he's now trying to blame Melania or Sean Hannity for that pick. It's never his fault, right?
Never.
When you pick somebody who's never run for a race before, really doesn't know how to do this, whole, political thing, in a statewide race, they aren't very good. But then even you look at a J.D. Vance who did win in a very safe Republican state, Ohio, he underperformed Mike DeWine, an experienced conservative governor, by 20 points. Mike DeWine won by 26 points. J.D. Vance only won by 6, but won by 6. And that was spending exponentially more on him. So J.D. Vance was a very expensive date. Mike DeWine, experienced policy guy, smart, nice guy that people liked, cheap date. So what do you want to do? Nominate a good candidate, and you had a situation, say, in Pennsylvania where, Pat Toomey, who just got sick of dealing with the Trump world, and Trump was nasty to him, so he says, you know what, I'm going to retire. I don't need this, and then instead we end up with Oz. You have this. And
we had, Toomey was example of like the kind of guy you want in the U.S. Senate. I mean, he was so balanced, level-headed, reasonable. If he could cross the aisle to get things done, he would do that. And, there's a part of me that just looks at this group of people he endorsed, he being Trump, is like he wanted people that were inferior to him to make him feel better. I'm serious. I'm not saying on a cognitive or, level, but subconsciously, He's trying to create a really ridiculous group to make him look less ridiculous.
Well, and he just wanted people who were loyal to him. He never looked at the skill set and in any other way because he's never understood even how this works. You know, he said silly things last week where he said, you know, well, they should impeach Mitch McConnell. Like, he doesn't even know the Constitution. You don't impeach a senator. A senator is elected, sir. You don't understand the process here. So, you know, this is someone who still, after all this time, has never understood the basics of our government, is unfit for office, as we know. So here's, you know, we've gone through this so many times. The guy who, you know, if you wake up today and you don't realize that the guy who lost you, you know, who never won the popular vote either time, lost you the House, lost you the Senate, lost you the White House, lost you those 2 Georgia seats. We're going to go into another runoff. Very well could lose that again, thanks to Donald Trump giving us an extremely flawed candidate in Herschel Walker. And then loses us a lot of these House seats. I tell you, here in Virginia, you know, the 2 candidates who were, you know, involved sort of in the kind of Trump world, election denying kind of operation, those are the 2 out of the 3 candidates who lost. You know, we had 3 competitive races, only one of them won. You know, one of the a state senator who was on the more serious experience side, not the ones who kind of came in and, you know, just kind of tried to run the Trump table and say, you know, I'll be loyal to Trump. And you had that, you know, up in New Hampshire, you know, you had a 25-year-old girl who had worked in Trump's press office who just, you know, was up there talking about the stolen election and whatever silly things she had to say to get his endorsement. You know, she lost big time. And, you know, people put a lot of money, and that's the thing, there was a lot of money spent on these races on ridiculous people who never should have been nominated when you could have had serious candidates who would have been a lot cheaper to get elected in what was a great year. You know, here you have a great year where you just get seasoned candidates who, you know, a state senator, a state rep, a local, a local chamber person, a normal, experienced, serious person who knows their community, who's involved, doesn't have any embarrassing background that hasn't been vetted because they've been active in their community and they haven't just, you know, moved in, you know, to run in that community, then, you know, then they can run and they aren't, you don't have to spend all this extra millions and millions of dollars like people have spent on Herschel Walker, who's a millionaire himself, but we're all supposed to prop him up because, oh, you had to have all these abortion stories that you didn't, you know, maybe that's why you shouldn't have run, but, or said you're pro-life.
Yeah. Almost all that money was spent on mitigating, not promoting. It was all spent on mitigating horrible records, horrible backgrounds by candidates who had no business running. And I think what's interesting is that, you know, what we were seeing were people saying, I'm pro-Hillary, and then they would quietly vote for Trump because they distrust the media. You know, we saw that in 2016 in particular. I think we're beginning to see a different phenomenon where people have peers that are all about Trump, and people still talk all about Trump in a certain sector of the political climate, but privately they have misgivings, you know. And as Charlie Rich said in his song, no one knows what goes on behind closed doors. No one knows what goes on behind curtains when they're like looking at someone like Herschel Walker and going, really?
Yeah, and you know, and listen, he wouldn't be a good senator anyway. He doesn't have the skill set a senator. So it's sad that that's where we're at. But I think it's a wake up call. I mean, even I watched Fox last night to see how, you know, if there were going to be any serious people actually saying that this was a problem, and it was refreshing to see a few of them to say, you know, you can't spin this any other way than it's a wake-up call that you got to move past Trump, that he has taken you down a bad path, and you can't spin this. There's no excuse for it. These candidates were, you know, you had a bunch of flawed candidates that never should have been there, and to blow this kind of year, you can't, you you can't blame the press. You can't blame anybody else. You know, you had more money than the Democrats. You know, everyone thought you were going to win. You were telling everyone you were going to win 30, 40 seats, and now you're just, you know, barely dragging in the trash.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see how Kevin McCarthy, you know him. I don't know him. I was gone from D.C. By the time he came in. As you know, I worked for the Senate, for a senator, and worked on the Hill a lot for groups that used to be reputable, like Heritage. But anyway, there's a part of me, you know, they're saying he's been quietly trying to dump some of these crazies, you know, in primaries, for example, and he played a role in that. And somehow the left were wagging their finger at him, you know, in a shame on you sort of way. But, you know, the reality is that I think he wants a record of accomplishment. I think, and historically he was serious until Trump came along. You know, is this an opportunity for him to rethink about what he's been doing and how he's done it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is going to be more challenging for him. So it is going to be, you know, wake-up call for all of them, because you can't, you know, he does have, unfortunately, it's going to be a shrunken majority, but he's going to have more like Marjorie Greenes in there, because some of the people who did win are more in that category, because they're coming from, you know, you had red retirements. So in these red districts, some of these more extreme people that were endorsed by Trump did get in because they were in such red districts. But they are people who want to cause trouble and who want to shut down the government and things that will be, you know, obviously problematic and not help. So I think you will see him. You know, I think he'll realize, and I think there's others. You know, you've seen Patrick McHenry, who will be the chair of the Financial Services Committee, stand up and talk about how, you know, we're going to need to be responsible, you know, to the business community, to Wall Street, to the banking community, to say we're not going to be shutting down the government. We're not going to be saying we can't raise the debt limit. We've got to do sound, you know, serious financial things here while promoting our free market principles. So I think and he's got a lot of serious members on that committee. I think you'll see Kathy McMorris Rogers as a chair of Energy and Commerce, you know, do the same, and also, you know, be getting back to that, you know, sensible, you know, center-right type of member who is working on, you know, getting people back to work, getting, you know, our, you know, economic engines going, you know, working with the businesses that are growing our economy and kind of freeing them up. So I do think I think this will be an opportunity for those members really to kind of use the legislative chops that they do have, because these new members who come in, they don't know how to pass bills or do anything. So I think these others will just have to step up and say, you know, we have to get some things done, or we are going to lose the trust of the people who have given us this majority, small that it is. So, and I think if we do get that one vote majority in the Senate, I think you do have, you know, with Mitch McConnell and John Thune, and John Cornyn, and kind of the serious, you know, leadership, you know, people like Joni Ernst and Susan Collins, and the serious members, Mitt Romney, you know, in the Senate. You have people who will, who can be good partners on that effort. So there's an opportunity here to turn what was a very bad night into we're moving past this, and then on the other side, then on the presidential side of things, there needs to be more people jumping in and saying, we didn't sign up for a dictatorship and having one guy tell us we have to support him and we don't get to choose. You know, we do get to choose. Yeah. And we break.
Yeah, and you know, and I'm no DeSantis fan. You know that. In some ways, he's maybe a little Trump-light. But you know, I was impressed to see a lot of Republicans come out critical of Trump's name-calling of DeSantis. I think we're kind of tired of that. Let's talk about substantive things, policy, you know, and not talk about name-calling. We're not in middle school, and frankly, a lot of that is more like elementary school. When do we outgrow that? And I think we may be getting to a point where we're outgrowing it. And although I, too, was surprised by the results, if it does mean we turn a page, I can only be delighted, because the more Trump is in the rear-view mirror, the better the prospects are for the Republican Party and really the country for years to come.
Yeah, no, and I think, And I think DeSantis himself probably was very smart. He never asked for the endorsement of Trump. Trump ended up saying vote for him, but he never asked. And he resents that he didn't ask. But that was a good separation for him. You know, as we know, I mean, he's probably not my favorite cup of tea on some different things, but I think he did show some independence there. And I think probably if he stands up and tries to be his own guy instead of a mini Trump, he'll be doing much better. And I think in Florida, there was an overperformance there because of some, you know, a lot of, you know, efforts to register voters, issues that the issues that they've worked on, and, you know, dealing with the, you know, natural disaster crises they had there, and some, you know, good things they've done. I think they've got a lot of school board people elected yesterday. So, you know, I think he has a record there that he can do things on his own. And I think there's plenty of other people who can do that also that I hope will step up and will have that discussion with other serious, you know, governors and people out there who I think the American people need to hear from. And I think what American people don't want this chaos. They don't want this person who's always focused on himself. And they said, hello, but this was hey, if you don't pay attention to the voters and your constituents, you know, we're not signing up for reality TV. We're not the Kardashians, you know. We're not trying to be on your reality show. We're living in reality, and we want somebody who's responding to ours.
Yeah, and again, not a fan. There's so many people I would put ahead of DeSantis in that office, but the simple being attacked by Trump with the name calling, and he said nothing. That was so refreshing. He didn't respond at all. That was so refreshing. Be a grown-up and let Trump look ridiculous with that name calling, whereas, you know, Trump can't stand even the slightest slant of possible criticism, you know, without going open with both barrels. And that's just a sign of weakness. That's not strength. And frankly, it was only weak people that call that strength. And so props to DeSantis. I hope we choose someone, and I say we. I loathe both parties most of the time, but I hope they choose someone other than him. But to me, I am seeing kind of an unshackling of the Republican Party when it comes to Trump, and it is way overdue. We're running out of time. Final thoughts from you. A great conversation, by the way. I'm so proud of you with your voice, how robust you are.
Well, I think, you know, fasten your seatbelts. I think it's going to be a wild ride over the next 2 years, and it's going to be unexpected. I mean, I think, look, Lauren Boebert unexpectedly is, you know, fighting for her seat and may lose, which is, I think, is a great outcome too. Talk about unserious people. So I think there might, but then you also had Sean Patrick Maloney, who got, you know, the Democratic chair, in charge of getting Democrats elected, who got a little bit too cutesy and trying to do different things. So I think annoyed his own caucus. So I think it's kind of a sober kind of, let's get serious about getting back to basics, and let's be normal people and a normal party again on both sides, and get down to business, and then we can talk again. So I think there's going to be some interesting dynamics going on, and sort of predictions go out the window. So I think it's like you just got to, you know, kind of plan for the unexpected these days.
Yeah, hold on to your hat, right? And next month, I mean, I'm not sure when you're back on. We always like to get you on every couple of weeks, but I know your schedule's crazy. But soon, we need to have you on just to talk about some of those chairmen. That was a very interesting people for the new Congress in both the House and the Senate. That was very interesting what you brought up, and that would be good for the listener to be familiar with. We'll do that. As they're actually formally put into place.
Great. Be happy to.
Yeah. Always love talking to you. Barbara Comstock, she's a favorite. And we'll have a link, of course, at priceofbusiness.com. And that will lead you to more information to find out more about her and her work. We mainly talk a lot about technology and policy. We'll do some of that as well as we continue in the weeks to come. But she's also one of my favorites to talk to about politics as well. Thanks, Barbara. Appreciate you. And protect your voice there. We need it.
Okay, great. Take care. Bye-bye.
I'm Kevin Price. More for you after this.